So if you have a question on the paper that I returned to you, please ask. If there's anything I changed, down to a single comma. I put a comma in and you don't know why, and you would really like to know why because you're just burning curiosity, then ask. I'm continuing to try to help people whittle down their writing. So I may cross out things and I just say it's unnecessary. And all I mean by that is you can say what you mean in fewer words. Remember the point. You might say, if I ask you what is the point of writing a paper, it's to please your mom and Mrs. Ferguson. That's really not the right answer. We want to learn to be clear to other people, right? This could be you're writing a letter to somebody. I know you guys don't write letters anymore. I get that. But many, many people, this is real world application. Many, many employers now are lamenting the fact that their employees can't write anything worth squat. They can't write clearly. And think of the jobs in which somebody has to write something. They have to write a company memo. My husband gets stuff, he brings it to me. I don't know what the human resources people are thinking. They write stuff that is not understandable, that's ambiguous, it's just not clear. And they've muddied it up with too many words. So this is not just so you'll make me happy. And I don't think we should live our lives just to make employers happy either. But the point of writing is you've got something in your head and you want the other person to understand it. And the more clearly we can do that, the better. Does that make sense? So that's my job to help you do that. Okay. I will collect your papers now as I try to not become tangled in my own trap. Someday we'll have to spring for the Bluetooth one. Thank you, ma'am. Papers, papers. I'm collecting papers.
Me just showing my chest, not having to.
Oh, that's Ethan's.
Awkward. I'm just
Here's my essay. I forgot to write the outline in my thing from last week.
That's okay. Oh, you don't need, I don't need your outline. Oh, no, it's not your outline. Okay. So I forgot everybody's stuff. All right, good. Yes. Oh, did you get a, please ask me about this message? Okay. Yes.
Also, a vast majority of people have made decisions to discontinue their education, making it difficult for the desiring poets and writers to sound.
Okay. So here's an example, if you don't mind me, Lauren. Making it difficult for the desire of writers and poets to be found. Okay. Now, let's ask, what does Lauren mean? People don't want to be writers and poets, right? That's what you mean? Mm-hmm. So here's something to notice, and this is one of the, if you get a book on style, writing style, this is one of the first rules they show you. So do you guys know the difference between active and passive? I'm sure you do from Latin. So, you know, the dog bit the boy. I don't have to write this on the board. Or the boy was bit by the dog, was bitten by the dog. Whenever we use active, it's more powerful. And passive is just weak. Now, passive exists for a reason. Sometimes we don't know who did the action, right? So we can't really have a subject of it. But instead of having the desire of writing poetry to be found, making it difficult for people to acquire a desire to write poetry. Do you see? And it's just very direct. So whenever you can do that, you know what? Maybe I'll do this someday. I'd love to do this. Someday I'm going to assign one of these summas and then give it back to all of you and say, now say the same thing but make it half as many words. And see if you could do it. I bet you could. It would be really challenging. But, you know, to snip, it's like I use 3 words, but is there one word that means the same as those 3 words? Boom, put it in. And I don't mean search your thesaurus for obscure stuff that nobody knows. But yeah, active is good in general. Passive sounds weaker. But it gives you more words. And that's why people do it. Because that's why college students do it. I don't think you guys are doing it to me. I don't think you're padding it to give me more words. I'm not going to beat you if you come in here with 150 words. You know, it's just not. But sometimes students will phrase it in a way that takes more words, just so they can rack up their word count. But teachers know. It just doesn't sound good. Okay. Anybody else have anything on your paper that you don't understand, or I said, please ask me about that in class? Yes, Ethan.
No, it's kind of not about that thing, but active, passive, what would you prefer? Like, would you prefer like this direct point?
Yes. Always, I would like us all, because some of you, this is the curse of being really good with words. Some of you are really good with words. You have an excellent vocabulary, and your sentence structure is very good, and they just flow from you. And I can tell it when I read your writing. But your danger zone is you just let it rip. You know what I mean? And you just go, and you just words are just pouring out of you, and that's great. But that's when the editing has to come in. When the brutal, you read your writing, it's like, oh, that's just a lot of convoluted stuff to say one simple thing. Maybe I should axe it and write the one simple thing. Lexi, what did you want to say? Well, those questions are for you to think about yourself. So on the bottom of some of your papers, because this was an interesting topic, and I got really interesting answers. I really liked, they made me think. And I loved that, because you came up with some ideas that hadn't occurred to me. Some of you, there were some ideas that cropped up over and over again. One theme was modern laziness. You know, that we don't want to read that sort of thing, and we don't want to write that sort of thing. But there were many, many other ideas. So for some of you, I just wrote a little question like that, and it's not even a correction on your paper. It's just something that I thought of while I read your paragraph. Do you think that all entertainment is equal? Because maybe you compared, different forms of entertainment, what we have today versus what they had then. Some might be of more value to us as human beings than others. Computer games probably not the most value, although love Age of Empires, although I only like to collect resources. I don't like to have fights. So I'm kind of boring. So I'm a good partner, right? I will pick all the berries and farm the land, and then you go fight the battle. I quit playing though because my son ambushes me. My guy's out cutting wood, I go and they're all dead. He's like, yeah, I killed them all. Anyway, but even that has some historical, the different units. Anyway, point being, generally we're better off with a book, aren't we, than we are with a computer. Okay, anybody else? Comment, question? I will go over your essays. This was obviously the first one for this year. Excuse me. It's called sleeping with the windows open and cutting grass and pollen. So we will use these as a starting point. Remember, an essay is just a trial. It's just an attempt. We're all learners. But this week, just to take away all suspense, we are not going to start a brand new essay. Because we really haven't read enough of the Odyssey to really get it going, So you only have a summa this week, a short answer. And here is your topic. Do modern Americans consider hospitality important? And so I bring this up obviously because hospitality plays such a big role in the Odyssey. Okay, who is hospitable, who is not? Eating your guests is not. In case there was any question on that. American. And now let me just tweak that question a little bit. We are all, as far as I know, believers, Christians in this room. And we realize that, entertain strangers, some by doing have entertained angels unaware, right? We have more of a hospitality code. I do not necessarily mean the Christian community. I mean modern Americans. John Doe out on the street, just some guy you would meet. That's the people I mean. Our society. Is that clear to everybody? Because I realize as Christians, we're going to hold the standard of hospitality probably in higher, in a different way because we're doing it, because we see Jesus in that person, right? So that is the thrust of the question. I have nothing I'm fishing for. I have no particular answer I'm looking for. I just want to know what you guys think. Because in the Greek world, this was so very important to host people. And we talked last week a little bit about the fact that I don't know that anybody in this room would just welcome some stranger off the street into your house and feed them and put their feet up and stuff and let them sit there for 2 hours and then ask them, yeah, well, who are you and what you doing here? No way. I'll just be perfectly honest. Who are you? What do you want? Where are you going? I want to know these things first. And they didn't. So, yeah, there's some moral failings going on here big time, right? But they had the hospitality thing really, really well. Do you have something you want to say? Well, I know, this is, okay, so this is a question that has occurred to me, so that all of you heard. Hannah said, maybe today strangers have the potential of being more dangerous, physically dangerous, than back then. And I don't know. Like, we hear about so much more stuff, but we have so many more people. Do you know what I mean? So if we did the percent of people who are serial killers or something like that, it's probably not a very high percent even today, and and with a lower population. I don't know. What do you think? Yes. So if there was some danger marauding, you might not know about it. So I just do not know if it's true or not, Hannah. I'm not telling you you're wrong. I just don't know. People, for my whole life, so I'm 55 years old, and my whole life, people are, oh, the world is getting worse and worse. And they just keep saying that. And then I always think, yeah, but the Vikings aren't marauding and burning down Peoria. And the plague, I'm sorry, but COVID is not the plague. Do you know what I mean? I'm sorry, but it's a little blip statistically. It's really not a big deal. The plague killed 1/3 of Europe. 1/3. 1 in 3 people died. Think of all the people you know. 1 in 3 of them is dead. And ugly, gruesome death, all right? That's horrible. So, and then I think of the Wild West. Sometimes I think, was it like that? I know cowboys came into towns, and drink and guns are bad combinations. Drinks, guns, and testosterone, you know what I mean? Are bad combinations in the bar. But I don't know, were they running around just shooting people in the streets of Dodge City or whatever? I don't know. But I feel like people have just always said, it's getting worse. And I don't know. My mom used to pick up hitchhikers. My dad told her not to. She never got, it was always a legit, his car broke down or he's just down on his luck. She never had a bad, don't pick up hitchhikers though. No, go home. Mrs. Ferguson told us to start picking up hitchhikers. No, she did not. She did not say that. But But yes, you know what, Hannah, what I can't agree with? We have the perception that people are more strangers are potentially more dangerous than apparently they did. And it's a very good point. If they've got a big spear or just whacking big sword on them, you know it and you see it. Whereas, of course, they could have a little dagger. Yeah, Lexi. Oh, see? Of course, and it would be a boring book if they picked up hitchhikers and the hitchhikers were just lovely people and they played, board games that night and they left in the morning. But it does happen. It does happen. So anyway, that is our topic. What do you think Americans feel about hospitality? Let's open up. Yes, sir. What do modern Americans think about hospitality? I think I actually said, Alex, do modern Americans consider hospitality important? Yes. Same as always. 250 to 300 words is what we're shooting for. Half a page, whatever. Of course, that depends on how big your font is and if you're double spacing or spacing and a half, so it's hard to say. These are all going to be the same. All these summas are going to be the same. Just a short answer. Yes. Yes, that idea. Okay, open up your reading guides to page 25, please. Last week we looked at the Minoans, the civilization that was based on Crete with their crazy bull leaping stuff and their labyrinthine palace. And we talked about the fact that they were apparently in charge of everything. They were the bigwigs of Greece for several hundred years, and then they just sort of petered away. And the next group that took over seemed to be large cities on the mainland, Mycenae being the key city. But Tiryns and Argos, Pylos was one of them, which is where Nestor, by the way, Nestor lives in Pylos. Sparta, where Menelaus and Helen live and, take drugs. And so they call this new civilization that takes over, this new group of people, the Mycenaean Civilization, because Mycenae. And I'm going to just kind of go down your outline here on page 25. This is the time period of the Trojan War. So we have Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, leading the troops at a time when archaeology tells us Mycenae was an enormous, powerful city. So it matches up with history. Everybody, just like Theseus and the Minotaur, everybody thought for years, this is just a bunch of bunk. Like the whole Agamemnon thing and this whole Trojan War thing, this is just a load of hooey. And till our friend Heinrich Schliemann that I talked about, he went over here and a bunch of money. Then in middle age, he went and he found Troy. And then he decided to come over here and look for Mycenae and Agamemnon. And guess what? He starts digging there and he finds this enormous, powerful city just chock full of gold and stuff. It was a rich place. And, yes. Say again? No, because they would have been not good anymore. And he found a golden hoard. This is one of the things, this is not actually, this is a reproduction. He found this golden mask. The original is solid beaten gold. And, you know, in the ancient world, many places, they used to bury people with masks, you know, like a death mask. And he, because he was just so into Homer, he called this the Mask of Agamemnon. He decided this was the Mask of Agamemnon. We do not know that this is the Mask of Agamemnon, but that's what they call it. I was fortunate enough when I went to Greece with my son a couple of years ago to visit the museum in Athens where this is. And along with the whole golden treasure trove that Mr. Schliemann discovered at Mycenaean. He had his wife dress up in the jewelry and took pictures of her. That's fun. Because they can. Yes. And it was a it's priceless treasure trove of jewelry, of gold. These people were very, very powerful. In other words, they so could have had a high king that ran the show and took all these troops to Troy. Next week, our art of the week is going to be more from Mycenaean. It's going to be their architecture. They built walls and gates of huge stone blocks, like Stonehenge stone blocks. Maybe not quite as big as Stonehenge, but enormous stone blocks. Another one of those, how'd they get that up there, you know, without a crane? What? So I'll show you pictures next week. But this is the next period. You do not have to write this down. I didn't write it in the book and it's not important. So we have the Minoans from roughly 2000 to 1450 BC. And then we have the Mycenaeans. They're our next guys. From, say, you know, 1450, 1400 to 1000-ish. Well, or maybe, what is it, 12? Yeah, we'll say 1000. And then they, too, lost their edge. We can't read these guys' writing. I told you, it's called Linear A, and we don't know what it says. We can read some of their writing. It's called Linear B. Apparently they couldn't think of another name. And we can read some of it, and it's very boring. It's like inventory lists from warehouses. 500 bars of gold, 40 cloaks, 30 cows. I mean, you don't keep cows in a warehouse, I realize, but it's lists of belongings. It's inventory lists. It's not like something, a book, you know, when you can't sleep at night, you want to go just browse through Linear B, unless you want to go to sleep. So we don't know a lot about them except what we find. But they didn't disappear. Something happened to them because around the same time, Mycenae burns to the ground. Pylos, Tyrans, Argos, Sparta, somebody's coming burning their cities and attacking them. We don't know who. But the party line, historians always describe these people called Dorians, coming from the north and swooping down and also attacking. They think they're related. I know this is kind of boring. I find it exciting. So some of them apparently swooped down the Mediterranean and were hitting the coast where Israel is and Egypt, and they refer to them as the Sea Peoples. They think the Philistines are related to the Sea Peoples. You know, like Goliath was a Philistine. It's the same group of people. But we don't really know. It's just sort of a term they use. But the Greeks actually thought of the Dorians as being a group of people because some of them called themselves Doric. We're the Doric Greeks. We're the, not Dorics, Dorics, other than the Ionics. And some of them, this is kind of interesting. So apparently Heracles, his proper Greek name, was on the run, and his sons, after he died, his sons were banished, and they came back and the legend says they took back over, and the Greeks sometimes thought that invasion was the sons of Heracles taking over. And they called themselves the sons, like descendants of Heracles. We don't know. Somebody came and wiped out a bunch of their important cities. Yeah, Carl.
So question, is Dorians like yours?
I don't know.
If they did, would their temples be gold or
Very, very funny, very clever. I come and I never ever know what's going to happen in a class. This is what makes it fun. Yes.
maybe it's the type of that otherwise is a big sun. Although they may like some kind of modern day, like ancient kind of like giant, something like that. Well, not kind of a dude, like that. They didn't have like the technology, but it would be kind of like a giant bomb or something like that. Blow up part of that.
You know a lot of stuff got written down
Or maybe they just lost a bunch of gas over the wall.
You know what? I feel like we could spend a lot of time speculating, but we're not gonna. We're gonna move on. But here's how bad it got. For several hundred years, we have no writing. They stopped writing. And I just want you to stop and think. You're a group of people. Okay, we have books. We read. We write. What could happen to make the world so bad we don't read or write anymore? Because we're too busy staying alive. Lexi. Yes. Yes. Because you're focused on staying alive, right? I've got to get food, I've got to get shelter, and I've got to not get killed by the people who are invading. So they refer to the next age that we're obviously not really going to talk about as the Dark Age. We're going to talk about it because it's dark, and we don't know anything, up until about the year 800. That's an 8. It's dark to us. It's dark to us because we don't have any information about them. But when they start writing again, in the period that we're going to talk about next week, the Archaic Age, what they're writing is recognizable as Greek. Linear A and Linear B are not recognizable as Greek. They don't use the same letters. When they come back, it's Greek, just in antiquated form. What? Greeks took over. Somebody else sent them, somebody might know, who imported their letters, where they got their Greek letters from. If you don't know, I'm just going to leave you hanging. Let's look at our questions now. Let's go back. I gave you Sappho's Hymn to Aphrodite. You may have availed yourself of reading it. You may not. It's okay. I forgive you. But I just wanted you to recognize that there were female, highly renowned poets in the ancient world. And Sappho was the top of the top. Yes. First of all, I can't hear unless you have,
What's your favorite album of the week, John?
I don't have a favorite, really. Sorry. Don't have a favorite. Okay, so turn back, please, to page 22. Okay. Odysseus finds himself in the... Oh, no, page 22 in your reading guide. I'm sorry. No, page 22 in your reading guide. No, I'm sorry. I thought that was clear, and it was not clear. We thought we'd read farther than page 22. I feel like you had. Odysseus is in the court of Alcinois in Phaeacia. And these people are just kind of weird. I told you last week as we were ending that they're sort of in between this fantasy world that Odysseus has been living in and normal people. Well, I don't know that they're as bad. That sounds like the lotus eaters almost, or it sounds like Helen's drugs. I don't know that they don't ever get unhappy. But, for example, we hear this about their land. Here luxuriant trees are always in their prime. Pomegranates and pears and apples glowing red, succulent figs and olives swelling sleek and dark. And the yield of all these trees will never flag or die, neither in winter nor in summer, a harvest all year round. Their fruit trees bear fruit all the time. There's no season. What? Maybe. Or maybe they're just cool. And then they say things like this. But if he's one of the deathless powers, they think Odysseus may be a god. If he's one of the deathless powers out of the blue, the gods are working now in strange new ways. Always up to now, they came to us face to face. Whenever we'd give them a grand, glorious sacrifice, they always sat beside us here and shared our feasts. You know how for everybody else the gods disguise themselves? Apparently not here. They say, I'm Athena, I'm going to come in and have dinner with you. What, you mean if a god did that? Yes. So my first question is, notice, by the way, notice how the Phaeacians treat him. He doesn't tell them for a couple of days who he is. You notice this? They do all this stuff. They feed him, they sing with him, they go out and have their little sporting event with him, and they still haven't actually asked, yeah, who are you? Where are you coming from? Are we following along at that table? Okay. And I'm going to go all teacher on you. If it doesn't stop, I'm going to start separating people. I'm going to be that person. Okay, so my first question was, what tale does the bard sing at Alcinois' feast? Well, eventually, yes. I guess I should have been more specific. That is a true answer. But there's another. Here's the one I was going for. It's in book 8. The muse inspired the bard to sing the famous deeds of fighting heroes, the song whose fame had reached the skies those days, the strife between Odysseus and Achilles, Peleus' son, how once at the gods' flowing feast, the captains clashed in a savage war of words, while Agamemnon, lord of armies, rejoiced at heart that Achaea's bravest men were battling so. Okay, we know nothing else about this. This story doesn't turn up in any other, like what, Achilles and Odysseus had some argument at a feast? But it makes Odysseus weep. Because, well, let me ask you, why does this song make him cry? And reminding him of the war, what else would it remind him of that happened in the war? Yeah, so many people are dead. Not to mention that it was because of that blasted war that I've been gone from home for 20 years and didn't see my son grow up. Yes, and guess what? The war lasts 10 years and then it takes you another 10 years to get home. Not good. So he weeps for all the lost time and the lost heroes, and Achilles is dead, and he weeps, and I find it funny. Do you notice how he keeps, like it says, and they bury his face in his, like nobody's going to notice if you just put your cloak over your head? You're sitting at a feast, like, yeah, he just does that sometimes. Like, nobody's going to know you're crying under your cloak. It's okay. He wants to discuss, yeah, like, he's a hoodie, right? You can just put it over his face. But he weeps because, because all these guys are gone. So, what do you think of the whole goading him into participating in the sports. The young guys who say, yeah, I don't know, he looks kind of old, I'm not sure he's awesome, he probably doesn't do anything like that. Yeah, like, yeah, I can fling, give me a heavy thing, and I can fling it farther than any of you. But don't ask me to run, because I've been on a boat, you know, but I can fling stuff. I don't know. Yesterday we wondered if that was not very hospitable of them. To sort of take your guest and taunt him, but I don't know. In their world, I'm not sure it was really very insulting. That's a really good point. So let me say that so that they can hear the recording. So Lexi thinks that maybe they were goading him because they wanted to check out his performance in the sports, because maybe they're just talking trash. You know, maybe they really do think he looks awesome and like he would be good at it. So they say, oh, I bet, yeah, it's kind of like you do with children. I bet you can't sit still and be quiet for 5 minutes. If you really want the kid to sit still and be quiet for 5 minutes, you know. So that's a really good idea. Maybe they wanted to see him in action. Yeah, Ethan. Yeah. Yes. Yes. And this is true. This is what guys do. Kind of teasing, but not really in a mean way. At any rate, Odysseus seems slightly offended, but it gets glossed over very fast. You know what I mean? There's no hard feelings. And then they take him presents, right? Oh, you're awesome. Have some presents. They still don't know who he is. But he does drop a hint. He says this in Book 8. They're asking, you know, is he any good at sports? And he says, well, I know how to handle a fine polished bow, the first to hit my man in a mass of enemies, even with rows of comrades pressing near me, taking aim with our shafts to hit our targets. Philoctetes alone outshot me there at Troy, when ranks of Achaean archers bent their bows. In other words, he just let slip some information. Oh, well, our guest was at Troy. Our guest is a Trojan hero. And he survived. And apparently he is good with a bow, which is going to come in handy later in the poem. Do you guys know the story of Philoctetes? Not the Hercules Disney. They need to beat him. He is a friend of Hercules. So the story of Philoctetes with the Trojan War, remember there's all these like bits and pieces of the whole story of the Trojan War, and you have to gather them all together and put them together to tell the whole story. So the story goes that Philoctetes inherited this bow, this awesome bow from Heracles. And yes. Yes. So Philoctetes was in possession of this. And on the way to Troy, they stopped somewhere to, like, you know, gather water. And he got bit by a nasty venomous serpent in the foot, and it wouldn't heal. It just oozed, and it was all pussy and gross. And it hurt all the time, and he just kept moaning and groaning. And this is the really, really horrid part. They got tired of him moaning and groaning, so they just left him somewhere. I know. They just left him, yes. They just left him on an island, and he had the bow. So he could like shoot food and then, I don't know, gimp his way over to it and collect it, I don't know, and moan. So they leave him there. And of course the Trojan War goes on for, you know, the first 9 years. So after Achilles dies, after the end of the Iliad, they find out, I don't know what their seers were doing and why they didn't give them all the information up front. They need Achilles' son, Neoptolemus, to take Troy. They also need the bow of Philoctetes. They're not going to take Troy until they get like almost shoot, we left him on that island. And you know, he's not gonna, I mean, maybe he will say, oh, thank goodness you came back for me. Or maybe he'll say, I'm just gonna start shooting you because you left me on this. So they go back, and Odysseus is part of the party to convince him to come back. So in the old stories, that's all we know, that they get Philoctetes to come to Troy. They also promise him this is the only way his wound can be healed. That someone will be there, Mycenaean, the healer, you know, that they can heal your wound. Okay, so, but time passes, and there's a play called Philoctetes that they wrote in the early 400s BC. And it's not one of the plays we're going to read. And Odysseus is a total jerk in this play. Odysseus was the hero, and then later in Greek literature, he's kind of a jerk. And he goes and he lies to Achilles' son, and he tricks, I mean, in a nasty way. And he just is gonna, like, kidnap Philoctetes and just grab him, but he lies. He says, oh, if you get out of my boat, I'll take you home to Greece because I feel so sorry for you. And he's just a real jerk, which is sad for me because I like Odysseus. I don't want Odysseus to be a jerk. Anyway, he mentions, back to the Odyssey, he mentions this, and I don't know if his hosts, you know, if they started to put it together, but they do say they're out living, they said people don't visit us very often, or when they do, they escort people home, but they don't get a lot of news from the outside world, so maybe they don't know who's made it home and who hasn't made it home yet. But they still don't know who he is at this point. They have their dance. And finally, oh, I wanted to go back, first of all, to the Bard's song. Okay. In came the herald now, leading along the faithful Bard, the muse adored above all others, true. But her gifts were mixed with good and evil both. She stripped him of sight, but gave the man the power of stirring rapturous song. He's a blind bard. Now, I already can hear the groans and the skepticism arising, but this is one of the reasons people think Homer is blind. They think Demodocus is Homer, that he's describing himself. And later on, Odysseus brings him, they sit down for another song, and Odysseus brings him a really nice piece of meat. And he says, from all who walk the earth, our bards deserve esteem and awe, for the muse herself has taught them paths of song. She loves the breed of harpers. And I want it to be true. You know, wouldn't it be cool to be Homer or just be some bard who's performing this and you get to sing those lines? The gods love us. The muses love us. We above all men should be honored as you sing these lines. I think it's kind of cool. But yes, I grant it's on very shaky ground that we think that Demodocus is Homer. He sang the Trojan horse, you mentioned. He sang the story about some argument with Achilles. He sang another story at one point. Do you remember the other story that he sang? Ares and Aphrodite. It was really, really long. It was a couple pages long. And it was all about how, you know, she's married to Hephaestus, but she's having an affair with Ares. And so whenever he leaves, you know, she hooks up with Ares, but Hephaestus finds out about it. So he sets up a booby trap, and he catches him, and this net falls on him and traps him. And all the gods show up, and like, oh, you got caught. And, you know, it's all... so this is long. And so my question is, and I don't really have an answer. I have a guess. But maybe you guys have a better answer. Why the heck is this in here? It takes up a big section of that particular book. Don't skip anything. No skipping. Yes.
Hephaestus, Ares, and Aphrodite are all sons of God.
Okay. Say again. Say it loud. Yes, yes. So, but I fail to see how that answers the question, why is this in here? It's an interesting, fun, disgusting fact. But I don't know either. But here, you want to hear my guess? Do we have a guess? Does anybody have a guess? Why kind of waste? So here's my guess. At the end of the poem, when all the gods are standing around, look at them. Okay, they say, a bad day for adultery, slow outstrips the swift. Look how limping Hephaestus conquers war, quickest of all the gods who rule Olympus. The cripple wins by craft. How did Hephaestus win? Well, yes, but not only that kind of craft. Like, was it brute force? Did he go fight Ares? No. What did he do to them? He tricked them. He tricked them. That's, I think, the craft. The cripple, the beggar, the loser. How is he going to win his battles? Not by brute strength, by trickery. And of course, we have Odysseus, who's the master of trickery, right? This is the only connection I can think of. Well, you should never read Philoctetes then and watch him be a jerk. Okay. Oh, I won't. We're gonna talk. We're gonna talk about that. So, Hey guys. So Odysseus himself requests the Trojan horse song, which makes him cry again and, hide. And finally, they say it. Who are you? They finally want to know. Just a second. I want to. Hang on. Tell me your land, your people, your city too, so our ships can sail you home. And skipping down, he says, this is the beginning of book 9. Now you're set on probing the bitter pains. Remember, he's the son of pain. The bitter pains I've borne, so I'm to weep and grieve, it seems still more. Well, then, what shall I go through first? I am Odysseus, son of Laertes, known to the world for every kind of craft. My fame has reached the skies. Think about this. He hasn't even been home yet, and they're singing songs about him. Like he showed, that's pretty awesome, right? Like multiple songs about him. And here's what he says. He says he's from Ithaca, and it's not the greatest island. It's rocky. It's not very good for farming. Mine is a rugged land, but good for raising sons. And I myself, I know no sweeter sight than a man's own native country. I want to go home. Then even just a few lines down, he says it again. So nothing is as sweet as a man's own country. Lovely. So he now launches into the rest of your reading, which is what we think about of the Odyssey, right? It's all the cool stuff. And I've got them numbered. We're going to go through his stops. First stop. They leave Troy, and this is the only sort of place we can actually find on a map. Although people do make these maps, the proposed voyage of Odysseus. Like, you don't know. He went to a bunch of imaginary places. We don't know. But he went up here to Thrace. This is the city of the Ismarians. And here's what they say, basically. We've been fighting at Troy for 10 years, and we finally got it. So before we go home, why don't we just go up there and sack another city? Are you tired? Are you tired of that? Do you just want to go home? No, we want more stuff. So they go up there, and his guys. I hope you have seen a pattern in the behavior of his men. he says, we should leave now. Like, no, we got all this wine and food. Let's just sit on the beach and have a picnic. While the guys who live there get reinforcements and come and attack them. So they lose some guys there. First, we don't obey Odysseus and we suffer for it moment. Okay, so storms. Next, they get blown to the land of the lotus eaters. What happens there? By the way, they describe the lotus here as some sort of fruit. I do not think it is the flower that we call a lotus. I don't think they're eating flowers, but it doesn't matter. What happens, Carl? No. Okay, well then tell me what happens at the lotus eaters, since you guys know. They never want to leave. They don't hurt them. So remember we talked about hospitality? Question. If you prevent your guests from ever leaving, is that good hospitality or bad? No, it's really not good. You know, they come and you're nice to them, but let them go home when they want to go home. Don't drug them and make them forget about home. That's not good. So he loses some men there. He actually has to physically drag them. They don't want to come. We have to go back. Then the Cyclops. Oh my goodness. So I asked you, guys, can we stop having a conversation? Thank you. I asked you, when the Cyclops falls asleep, he's plotting to get out. Why doesn't he just kill him the first night? Hannah. They can't move the stone. Odysseus doesn't ever lose his head, right? He thinks it out. He scopes out the situation. So they show up at this place, and they land on an island out in the harbor first. And they're like, oh, this is awesome. You know, if anybody nearby actually practiced agriculture or did anything productive, they could make use of this. And he says, he asks that question that he asks over and over, who lives here? Men like us, perhaps, who live on bread? Like they normal people with an agricultural society? No, they don't. Here's what he describes them. They are lawless brutes who trust so to the everlasting gods they never plant with their own hands or plow the soil. Unsown, unplowed, the earth teems with all they need. Wheat, barley, and vines, swelled by the rains of Zeus to yield a big, full-bodied wine from clustered grapes. They have no meeting place for council, no laws either, each a law to himself. That's how the Cyclopses live. They are not civilized at all. They got no government, they got no agriculture, they're just milking their sheep and eating their cheese, apparently, and eating passersby. So, why in the world does Odysseus go into that cave and wait for Polyphemus to come home? What, Ethan? Or Alex? Yeah. Would you like to donate to our mission? Some cheese? And to us, okay, I got to admit that sounds crazy to me. Like you don't just go, hello, do you have some cheese? I'm on a journey. Can I have some cheese? But well, see, and that's the thing. Did he not notice that everything was ginormous in this cave? Don't you know it was? Okay, apparently Odysseus is an optimist. Like, no, it'll all turn out. And here's what Polyphemus answers him. Okay, Odysseus says this. You need to give us gifts. Okay, even a guest gift. The sort that hosts give strangers. That's the custom. Respect the gods, my friend. We're suppliants at your mercy. Zeus of the strangers guards all guests and suppliants. Strangers are sacred. Zeus will avenge their rights. Here's what he answers. Stranger, he grumbled back from his brutal heart. You must be a fool, stranger, or come from nowhere, telling me to fear the gods and avoid their wrath. We Cyclops never blink at Zeus, and Zeus's shield of storm and thunder, or any other blessed god. We've got more force by far. They're not hospitable and they're not pious. Like they don't care about the gods at all. Till they get their eyes gouged out. Then they pray. Right, but only to dad. So he says, Odysseus says, when he's in this cave, he doesn't give up, he says, my wits kept weaving cunning schemes. Who else has been weaving a scheme? Well, this is Odysseus. Who else has been weaving a trick? Penelope is whatever her name is. His wife, back home. They're two of a kind. And so, you guys know the story. Gouges out his eye, and so the joke, we gotta talk about the Greek joke. I think I told you guys about this last year, but I'm telling it again. He doesn't tell Polyphemus his name, right? He said, well, who are you? I'm nobody. And they said, well, nobody? I'm gonna give you a present. I'll eat you last. Because you gave me such good wine. I'll eat you last. You're welcome. And so the joke is, obviously, when he gets his eye gouged out, he's screaming, and all the other cyclopi, crowd around, and they say, well, what's the matter? Nobody's killing me. Nobody is killing me by fraud and by force. And of course they say, if nobody's killing you by fraud or force, shut up and go back to sleep. You're messing with us. Okay, but here's the Greek joke. And this is why it is Mrs. Ferguson's aspiration to read this in Greek someday. That's why I do my Greek every day. It should be to read the Bible in Greek, and it is, but it's also to read the Odyssey in Greek. So, tis means not anybody, not someone, nobody, okay? That's what it is in Greek. Tis is killing me, he yells. But when they use it as a question, if nobody's killing you, they have two ways to do a negative, a not, and they say may tis. So he says, tis is killing me. And they say, if metis is killing you, shut up and go back to sleep. Here's the joke. The word, if you put those two syllables together and make them one word, it's metis, and it means craft, trickery, cleverness, cunning. So when they yell back, they say, if trickery is killing you, and it is, it gives me goosebumps because it's such an awesome thing. Don't you all want to learn Greek now so you can read it for yourselves? And so it's a little Greek joke. They say if trickery is killing you, but it's a pun because they're also saying if nobody is killing you. But of course, Odysseus can't let it rest at that. They get out and they're in the harbor. They are scot-free, headed out, and he's got to do it. Hey, just in case anybody asks, you can tell him it was Odysseus that poked your eye out. Oh. So then the Cyclops, of course, prays to his dad Poseidon. It's Odysseus, get him, and he says, and he heaves a boulder at his voice. His guys are like, shut up, Odysseus. Don't, just let it go. And the Cyclops shouts out after him a refrain we hear many, many characters saying. Let him come home late and a broken man, all shipmates lost, alone in a stranger's ship, and let him find a world of pain at home. We hear this refrain. People say this over and over. Like prophets say, this will happen. If you eat the cattle of the sun, this will happen. And they use the same phrase. And of course, we know he's on Phaeacia. And have you noticed he has no ships and all his shipmates have been lost at this point. So next, the island of Aeolus, keeper of the winds. Who's a hospitable enough guy? You know, hey, I'll bag up the negative winds, and I'll only let loose the wind that blows you home. Awesome. However, why do his guys let loose the winds? What? Because they think he's got some treasure in there and he's holding out on them. Well, Odysseus gets all this stuff. Because Odysseus is awesome. But apparently, I was wondering about this when I read this time. What does that say about Odysseus? I mean, does it say something about Odysseus or his men, that his men think he's capable of like hiding things away and not sharing it out? Does that mean he's in the habit of doing that, or does that mean his guys are just jerks? I don't know. We can't, well, these aren't Phaeacians, these are his crew. We don't see that Odysseus has been in the habit of being a jerk to his guys. What is Odysseus doing while this happens, by the way? Taking a nap. No. Odysseus has a bad habit of taking naps at inopportune moments. Because we're going to see him take another nap here in a minute. So yes, they think he's holding out on him. So they get almost there. They're almost home. Boom, we're blown back. Thanks so much, guys. Yeah, Lexi. Say again. Yes. I don't know why he didn't. And maybe he did and they didn't believe him. I don't know. Would wind feel like gold? I feel like not. I've never had a bag of wind. I guess I have. You know, you blow up a Ziploc bag or something and it's all bubble wrap is basically a bag of wind. Okay, heading out. The Laestrygonians. These are giants. They also eat people. Nice. And they're even described as skewering the guys like fish. Like when they wreck their boats, they throw boulders and wreck their boats and then they just spear them like fish and eat them. Wow. Okay. They were guy kebabs, sailor kebabs. Then they meet up with Circe. Circe, by the way, some of you know this person. We're going to read a play about this person. Circe is a relative of Medea. I know. They're both very tricky. And so she's got some sort of potion, and she waves her little wand, and she turns them all into pigs with the most horrifying, okay, one, yeah. Well, didn't you read it? Okay. So this is terrifying. Listen to this. This is worse than Stephen King, I'm telling you. She struck with her wand, drove them into her pigsties, all of them bristling into swine, with grunts, snouts, even their bodies, yes, and only their men's minds stayed steadfast as before. Their minds are still human minds, but they're turned into pigs. I'm sorry, but if you're going to turn me into an animal, I want the mind to go too. I don't want to be snorting around and digging in the mud and wallowing and thinking, ew, this is disgusting. I just want to take a shower.
Well, here, if you had the mind of a human, you wouldn't walk on the road.
Perhaps not, but maybe the instincts of the animal would take over, but you would just loathe it. I don't know, but I think it's horrifying nonetheless. By the way, do you find anything ironic about his men being turned into pigs? Okay. They have been behaving rather swinishly. They're selfish, they open the bag. Later on, we're going to see them eat that cattle of the sun. I'm sorry, he told you over and over, don't do it. They just aren't very restrained. constrained, and they sequence they're like a bunch of pigs. Poor Eurylochus is so scared out of his mind, he runs back to the ship, and it takes him forever to, even after everybody gets turned back into their right form and everybody's okay, like, no, I'm not going back there. It's a trick, it's a trick. How does Odysseus escape? Hermes helps him. What does he give him? Gives him an herb. And we have this enigmatic, it's something, the people have a name, but the gods call it moly. Moly, and everyone's like, what the heck is moly? We have no idea. And then people actually who care deeply about these things write whole essays on what did he do with it? Did he eat it? Did he put it in his pocket? Did he smoke it? What did he do with the herb? We don't know, but it makes him not turn into a pig. And Circe says this. This is great. Never has any other man withstood my potion. Never. Once it's past his lips and he has drunk it down. You have a mind in you no magic can enchant. You must be Odysseus, man of twists and turns, because Hermes said you would be coming this way eventually. You have a mind. She didn't say a body no one can enchant. You have a mind in you no one can enchant. You're smart. It would be. So, any remembrance of how long they spend with Circe? They spend a year. It says the seasons rolled around. They spend a year. I thought they really wanted to get home. They stay here. Maybe so. That seems like a long time. And Circe informs him, I am sorry to tell you, Carl, because it echoes. You guys think you're whispering, but it echoes and everybody can hear. I've lost my train of thought now. Oh, you've got to go to the underworld. Your way home lies through Hades. You have to sail there. And how does Odysseus react? Okay, that's a question you don't ask. It's epic poetry, it's fantasy, it's, you know what I mean, it's one of those things that you just can't do it. But if it's a physical place, you can get there. And they believed it was a physical place. They believed that caves were, yes, under the ground. Yes. I would not be happy either, I'll admit it. But I think it's interesting that Odysseus, who's the awesome Odysseus, isn't afraid to weep. Do you know what I mean? He's emotional. And we get the idea that all men are always not emotional through all times of history, but it's not really so. There were times when it was perfectly manly to just break down and cry. It's just, standards change. So he goes to the kingdom of the dead, mostly to consult Tiresias. Tiresias is this prophet. I swear, he shows up in every single Greek play. How long did this guy live? He's always, and Tiresias, the blind seer, is like, here he is again. He's always showing up. Tiresias apparently has news for Odysseus. He doesn't, however, give him much news at all. Do you remember what he hears? What does Tiresias tell him? Basically two things is all he gets out of this whole trip. Thing number one, don't eat the cattle of the sun. Don't do it. Or you will come home all shipmates lost, and in a stranger ship and find a world pain at home. Other thing, when you get home and all this is over, you need to take an oar, put it over your shoulder, and start hiking inland. And get far enough away from the sea that someone will stop you and ask you why you are carrying a winnowing fan, which is, how the ancient world, they would chop down the grain and then stomp on it, and the seeds would fall out, and then you throw it up with a pitchfork, and the wind carries away the leaves and the bits that you can't eat. and the seeds fall back down. It's called winnowing. And they think it's a fan to make the wind to winnow the grain because they have never seen a boat. That's how far away they are from the sea. When this happens, plant your oar in the ground, make a sacrifice to Poseidon, and you're golden. Okay, I can do that. It doesn't sound as scary after the stuff he's been through. Who else does he see in the underworld? Why is she dead? She died of a broken heart because Odysseus didn't come home. This is awful. The first poor guy they meet is Alcinois. Do you remember Alcinois is the poor dude that the night before they left, he drank too much and he went to sleep up on the roof, and in the morning he was kind of hung over and he forgot he was on the roof and he just fell off the roof and broke his neck and died. I should not be laughing at that. It's not funny. And apparently they just leave. They just leave his body there. And so he comes and says, hey, bury me already. When you're done here, go back home and bury me because I can't cross the river, until I'm properly buried. And so he talks to his mom, he talks to Tiresias, and he sees a lot of famous women who, for time's sake, I'm not going to go through. If you care about who the individual women are, they happen to be in the back, but it's not important. But then he sees some people that start sounding familiar. Agamemnon, first up. Here's what Agamemnon has to say. There's nothing more deadly, bestial, than a woman set on works like these. What a monstrous thing she plotted. Slaughtered her own lawful husband. Why, I expected at least some welcome home from all my children, all my household slaves when I came sailing back again. But she, that queen hell-bent on outrage, bathes in shame not only herself but the whole breed of womankind. And so Odysseus says, how terrible, what armies of us died for the sake of Helen? Clytemnestra schemed your death while you were worlds away? True. Agamemnon's ghost kept pressing on. So even your own wife, never indulge her too far. Not that you, Odysseus, will be murdered by your wife. She's much too steady. Her feelings run too deep. Icarius' daughter Penelope, that wise woman. And then he goes and starts reminiscing about Penelope. But he says, bear it in mind, when you reach your homeland, steer your ship into port in secret. Never out in the open. The time for trusting women's gone forever. You never know. So again, that's like this cautionary tale. Agamemnon came home, and it really didn't turn out well for him. Beware, Odysseus, because it might not turn out well for you. He meets Achilles. Achilles is kind of interesting. Achilles, of course, Odysseus reveres Achilles, right? Because he's awesome Achilles. And he says, oh, there's no one more blessed than you, Achilles. You're the greatest. You're the Lord of the dead down here. And he says this, no winning words about death to me, Odysseus. By God, I'd rather slave on earth for another man, some dirt poor tenant farmer who scrapes to keep alive, than rule down here over all the breathless dead. Being dead stinks, because it's boring down here. It's really deeply boring, and I'm just a shade. I just wander around. I got the glory and fame thing going for me up there. But you know what? At this point, I'm thinking maybe a little more life might have been nice. But then right after that, do you remember what he asks about? His son. But tell me about my son. Is my son awesome? And Odysseus says, yeah, your son came to Troy. He's awesome. And it says Achilles gets all happy. And he just like, oh, my son's awesome. Newsflash, Achilles, where's his son going to be eventually? Where's his son going to end up? Old, and then after he's old, dead, and where's he going to be? In the underworld. You know what? You're going to end up there. Your son's going to end up here too. What did you just say? That being in the underworld kind of stinks. Oh, yeah, but my son's awesome. All's right with the world now. Achilles, Achilles. I think you're thinking things through. And then the sad one, Ajax. Big Ajax, who won't even speak to him because of the armor. You won the armor, Achilles' great armor, and I didn't win it, and I committed suicide. I'm not talking to you for eternity. Wow. And then he sees all these famous guys. Tantalus, who's being tantalized, right? Tantalus, whose punishment is forever to see the drink, but when he tries to drink it, ebbs away. To see the food, when he tries to grab it, the wind blows it away, and he's perpetually tantalized. And Sisyphus, the guy who's rolling the rock up the hill, and then it just keeps rolling back down forever. Okay, then they come out of the underworld, and they head for final stop before Calypso. Cattle of the sun. He tells them again, do not eat it. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped the sirens. I skipped the sirens and Charybdis and Scylla. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. The sirens. So here's Mrs. Ferguson's guess. The sirens, we know about the sirens. They sing, and you just can't resist their song, right? And it makes sailors crash on the shore, or stay there and never leave, and their bones rot, they rot away, and they're just all littered on the shore. All from the siren's song. So Odysseus can hear them, because he's tied up, and all his guys have wax in their ears. Here's what the sirens say to him. Come closer, famous Odysseus, Achaea's pride and glory. Moor your ship on our coast, so you can hear our song. Never has any sailor passed our shores in his black craft until he has heard the honeyed voices pouring from our lips, and once he hears to his heart's content, sails on, a wiser man. That's not true. We know all the pains the Achaeans and Trojans once endured on the spreading plain of Troy when the gods willed it so. All that comes to pass on the fertile earth. We know it all. Do you think there's anything there that might be specifically interesting to Odysseus? They say, we know all the pains, I've lost it. We know all the pains the Achaeans suffered, the Achaeans and Trojans suffered on the plains of Troy. And all that comes to pass on the fertile earth. We know it all. What in that might Odysseus like to hear, do you think? He could hear everything that's happening on the earth, because life is full of unknowns, right? Agamemnon just said, watch out, watch out. He could tell me everything that's happening. What else? What about we know all the pains the Achaeans suffered? When people suffer something hard, is it nice to have somebody who understands? We know how hard it was, Odysseus. We know how many people you lost. We know all the pains you endured. Come and be nostalgic with us forever till you die. Which won't be that long. I wonder if it's that. They talk about men who come home from war. It was bad in the Vietnam War, I know. Men came back and they just did and saw terrible things. And there was no one really to talk to, because their families didn't understand. And to have, but they're fellow soldiers, they get together, it's like, we know. And I wonder if there was an attractiveness. We can give you information, but we can also commiserate with you. We feel your pain, Odysseus. We know how hard it was. And so it is my hypothesis that the sirens sing whatever each person most wants to hear. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the same song. It's not just a particularly catchy song. And they know what will grab you? I don't know. I can't prove this. But it would be, yeah, twisted empathy, because we kill you with it. Crazy. Maybe. Except, yes. I don't know. Then Circe had warned him, I won't go into it. Scylla comes down with her heads and eats you. Or Charybdis whirlpool sucks you down. You got a choice. And then they show up the island of the sun. Don't eat them. Don't eat them. 1,000,000 times I say don't eat them. Then what does Odysseus go and do? What does Odysseus go and do while they're eating him? Did you notice? Takes a nap. Again, I'm telling you, buddy, get a good night's sleep and stop napping. And he comes back and he smells the meat, and then if you learn nothing else from this year, learn this. The cattle were dead already, and the gods soon showed us all some fateful signs. The hides began to crawl. The meat, both raw and roasted, bellowed out on the spits, and we heard a noise like the moan of lowing oxen. Sorry, when your meat starts moving and talking to you, eat it. Don't. Run the other way. Don't eat talking meat. Ever, ever. And so, indeed, he loses all his ships. He loses all his men. And when he comes home, he's coming home alone. All shipmates lost. And he will find a world of pain at home. So, he has caught us up now. His little flashback. And now he's back to the Phaeacian dinner, where they have been sitting in rapt attention. In fact, there's a moment, I don't know if you caught it. He's telling his story, and suddenly it shifts into the present, and Odysseus says something like, well, it's getting late. Do you think we ought to go to bed now? And I'm like, no, keep telling your story. It's awesome. Now, he's been warned over and over, right? Watch out what happens when you come home. He doesn't know exactly what's happening, but we do. His house is full of guys who not only want to kill his son, but would kill him in a heartbeat. And the odds don't look good, like 100+ guys against one. Also, think about something else. When Odysseus left 20 years ago, did he leave by himself from Ithaca? Is he the only guy from Ithaca that went to Troy? He had his men. Who are these men? They're the residents of Ithaca. He's got sons and brothers and old men waiting there saying, where are my kids, Odysseus? You lost everyone in the war? How did you manage to get home? All our sons, all our dads are dead? But not you. Ithaca may not be the biggest Odysseus fan right now, okay? They might not be real happy. So he's got to watch his step. Because as you notice, half the book is left, half the poem. And we've heard all the exciting parts, right? The journey part. He's still got to fix home. Because it's not enough to come home, is it? And then get killed like Agamemnon did. That didn't do any good. Okay, so everybody, I'm going to tell you something, and it may or may not be popular, but it's just the way it is. You should never preface an announcement with that. This doesn't sell it well. It's like I should say, you have a wonderful opportunity coming up. It's too late. So, you guys know I teach this class other times. Okay, so it's not so bad. It's not so bad. And I planned my breaks because I did not want to stop in the middle of a book. You know, my kids have 2 more weeks, and then we finish the Odyssey, and we're taking a fall break. But you guys, I'm not the one who plans your breaks. So, also, I teach 2 extra weeks that you guys don't get, but you're going to get them because of that. What I would like to do, because if I have you finish the book the next 2 weeks, and then we come back, it's way too much for us to talk about. It's just way too much. So I am going to record next week's class on Tuesday, and I would really like you to watch it. It's an hour and a half of your time. All right? And I will send the YouTube channel to all your, actually I already put it in the email, which I'm going to send out. I can't make you do it, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the last 6 books of the Odyssey, okay? And I'm going to have a writing assignment that we're going to start, and it really helps me if we can all stay together. Do you know what I mean? So I don't have to remember, what are you guys reading? I did that last year for the high schoolers. You know, I read, my other kids didn't read Moby Dick. They read other things, and it almost made me go insane, you know, because I was trying to keep track. So for next week, read the next 6 books of the Odyssey, and on Tuesday night, a video will appear on YouTube. And I would love for you to just sit in on my class for next week, and then when we meet 2 weeks from now, we can just discuss the rest of the end of the Odyssey, all right? That said, please email or call me at home. If you watch it, if you have any questions, it's fine. Leave a message on the answering machine. I think I put the email that goes out to your parents has my home phone number on it. Just call me and say, Mrs. Ferguson, I'm not sure about that. Or if I say anything that you think is interesting and you just want to talk about it, call me. It's fine, all right? But it will be best if we do that. Now, when my kids take a break, the reason I'm doing it partly this way, the next book we're going to read, my kids have a 2-week break, and I gave them a huge reading, but you guys will only have 1 week, so you're going to do a half reading. Like, we're going to split that in half for you. Does that make sense? So that all my 3 classes stay in sync. So next week we're going to start a new essay. And on the video, I'm going to talk about invention and arrangement again, all right, and give you the new topic. Are we good with that? All right. It's not so bad, is it? It won't ruin your week, hopefully. I'm guessing you probably don't just sit around and do no work at all on your week off. But if you do, I'm sorry. And if you choose to just read the whole rest of the Odyssey and just show up in 2 weeks, it's not the end of the world. Okay, it's fine. But if you want to hear me discuss the next 6 books, just watch the video. Okay? Are we good? Enjoy your, despite that, enjoy your break.